Hello, Savannah. Hello, 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 Savannah. It is April and it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I also want to say happy Easter to everyone. I hope you found some way to celebrate our risen Savior. Listen, during the month of April, across the nation, many people are honoring and having for awareness activities Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we want to be a part of helping our local organizations, helping our local churches, our local universities, as well as our local businesses recognize that they too have a role to play when it comes to stopping rape. Now, we know that rape is one of the most egregious offenses that a person can face, only second to homicide. For that reason, we work tirelessly every single day in many facets to prevent this act, if at all possible. I am now excited to be able to launch a male initiative entitled Men Can Stop Rape Institute at 2717, which is a local gym. We know that on college campuses and in our local schools, oftentimes athletes as well as individuals who are a part of fraternities are accused of rape. And they are also individuals who commit rape. And so we want to be a part of the process while we have worked for years advocating and doing very, very important work when it comes to serving victims who find themselves on the other side of this issue. Work that is meaningful and work that still has a lot of effort that needs to be put forth behind it. And so I'm so happy to now be a part of the proactive role in preventing sexual violence, in preventing child molestation through awareness and education. More importantly, what I want to do tonight is highlight a group of men, a group of individuals who are near and dear to my heart and my profession, and help them help me to have them help me present to you ways in which they, in their respective places, have essentially through their work helped to prevent sexual violence and rape. Joining me tonight is Representative Scott Holcomb, one of my favorite state reps. Representative Scott Holcomb represents District 81 in Atlanta, and he championed a bill known as the Compassionate Care Act a few years ago, which called for expedient processing of rape kits. We know that there was a nationwide epidemic where rape kits were concerned, and we had a man in the Georgia State House that said that is unacceptable here in the state of Georgia. And he helped to do something about it. And guess what, y'all? His work has not stopped. His work has not stopped. It has continued with yet another landslide of a bill. And what is that, Representative Holcomb? Tell us about it. Tell us about it. Tell us about it. And tell us how you are continuing to help in this work.
Well, thank you, Alderwoman Gibson Carter. It's great to be with you. We've been friends for a long time now. And of course, our friendship was forged by working on this issue back in 2015 and 2016 when I first got into to work on this. Is you were one of the advocates that I relied on in terms of your expertise and knowledge, and you've been a strong leader in the coastal empire and the Savannah community for a long time. So I want to first thank you and commend you for your efforts for a really long time, and I'm certainly grateful to be with you. My own role in this is one that is not abstract. I know a lot of women who have been impacted by sexual violence. I also know men who have been impacted by sexual violence. It's very devastating to victims, and it's a very consequential crime. So, as you mentioned, it's one of the most severe and significant. So, to give a very quick summary of where we've been and where I hope to go, let me just share the following. Back in 2015, 2016, we had kits at the state level just lingering on shelves. So literally nothing happened. After victims would report, they would go and have the evidence collected. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. The system failed them, and kits just sat on shelves untested. And I thought that that was reprehensible. I thought it was horrible. And I knew that it needed to be fixed. So I helped to pass legislation in 2016 to set up a system to ensure the timely processing of sexual assault kits. But if you think about it, that was the baseline. The baseline was the system was so bad that evidence wasn't even being tested. So we worked very hard after establishing that law to then appropriate funds, because it's not enough to just say that they need to be tested. You have to appropriate monies for that. So at the state level, we appropriated millions of dollars to clear the backlog and to test all the evidence. And from that, we've identified suspects, we've solved crimes, and I think we're going to solve additional crimes going forward.
And now we know that the important thing about that work that you just described is the fact that rapists are recidivists. They are not specialists. They commit a myriad of offenses. So when that evidence, and the evidence that we're talking about, is from victims who have essentially subjected their unclean, violated bodies for evidence through a medical process, much like a gynecological exam for women, and you can imagine what that looks like for men. And so this evidence was collected in kits and submitted to law enforcement and then placed on shelves. And that's where your work came in. And that's why it's important for that tracking system.
That's right. So then in 2019, recognizing that we had a lot of evidence that went back decades, and we were using this evidence because of advances in DNA to now solve crimes, Georgia passed another law, which I helped author and pass, which extends the time that we hold the evidence for up to 50 years. So Georgia now has one of the strongest preservation bills in the country, which is important because I want to give maximum opportunity for us to solve these crimes. So this year, to get you all up to speed on where we are now, the next effort of the reform effort was to establish a tracking system. We can track lots of different things that we use in our daily lives. It's very easy for us to do it. We know when we order something and when we get something. So just the idea of a tracking system isn't terribly complex. And so I wanted to have for victims for a sense of communication, a sense of knowledge, and a sense of awareness in terms of what is happening with the evidence. I want the state to establish a tracking system. And fortunately, we were able to pass legislation that will do just that. And it passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate. So a very strong message, and I think the governor will sign it. So within probably a year or two, one, I hope we never have any more victims, but unfortunately, I think that we will. And if so, then victims will be able to track the status of their kit, which is really part of themselves. They are the evidence. All the way from the time period of evidence collection to the courtroom. And what I'm hopeful for is ultimately I want to reduce the rates of incidents of violence. So we're still working on fixing the system, but that's where we need to go. And so I really applaud you on getting men involved. Men are largely responsible for this problem, and men have to step up and try to stop it. And I really want to see our overall rates of violence go way down. That's yes. Where we need to go as a state.
Yes, yes. And I cannot tell you enough how happy I am, one, to know you, and two, to have someone like you taking a stand. Of all of the initiatives, of all of the work you can be doing in the State House, you selected this work. And I am so pleased to have a male as an ambassador for this work, because it is truly the efforts of men. You all are in most of the places of power and authority. You help to shape, inform policies that we as citizens live by, and how best it is to have you at the head of making these decisions. And so thank you for your proactive work. Thank you for being diligent, and thank you for your dedication to survivors across the state of Georgia. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
stopping by.
You're
And
welcome.
we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Now coming up, we were going to have my intrepid team of male ambassadors who have decided that they are going to, I want to bring them all in, bring them in, bring them in, bring them in. These are men in the city, across the state, individuals I have known, and they are working in various areas of professions throughout our city as well as the state. And so we want to have them give examples and talk about how men can stop rape. Listen, the fact of the matter is, again, as I stated before, there's just a small percentage of the male demographic that commit multiple rapes. And so men generally get a bad rap when we start talking about rape. But men have mothers, they have wives, they have daughters, grandmothers, aunties. They have women in their lives who they love and adore. And they no more want those women to be raped than they would commit a rape. And so, for by virtue of that fact, they are in the perfect position to be ambassadors for this work, ambassadors through their profession, in that they come in contact with young men who are impressionable and vulnerable and oftentimes susceptible to that criminal element, but by virtue of the fact that they don't know the law. And so joining me tonight is our intrepid historian and civic advocate, activist in the city of Savannah, Dr. Amir Jamal Toure. I have my dear friend and classmate from the Fort Valley State University, the Wildcats. Yes, Dr. Toure. Uh-huh. What do you get when you mix a tiger with a wildcat? What is it, Dr.
You don't want to know.
Listen, I am I hail proudly from Savannah State University, but I must say Fort Valley State was my first love. Is where I got my undergraduate degree, and I hold a master's from Savannah State University. So that makes me, Dr. Toure, you don't like to say it, but it makes me a wild tiger. That's right, a wild tiger. A wild tiger.
A wild tiger in the house.
Chief of Police of Fort Valley, the city of Fort Valley, is Lawrence Spurgeon. Thank you, sir, for joining us here. And then we have head of the basketball team, the men's basketball team at Savannah State University, Coach Broadnax. Thank you so much. And advocate extraordinaire. This woman, you can't speak to her without her reading you and her attempting to help you through everything you think you might be going through and things that you don't know that you're going through. I'm like, Nadira, don't diagnose me, please. Let me be. Let me be. Miss Nadira Brown, local licensed counselor and former advocate for rape services at the Rape Crisis Center. Listen, y'all, let's talk. Let's have this conversation. Coach, I know you have to step out a little bit early, but we want to talk about your role as a coach. And, before I start, Nadira, because I know when we start talking about this and as people are watching and listening to us here, because rape and sexual violence is so pervasive, and so many people have been touched by this, I want you to give a disclaimer, acknowledging how individuals can get support and how they should not ignore whatever triggers they may feel by way of listening to us here tonight.
Yes, ma'am. So tonight we will be talking about sexual assault. And when you hear about this type of trauma, it may invoke some feelings, some thoughts that you may have not dealt with in a while. So while you're listening, there's help. You can definitely look up some resources online, rain.org, 1in6.org, and also go to psychologytoday.com and look up a therapist. There's also suicide hotlines and teen hotlines as well. If you are triggered, and email Kesha. She has a ton of resources as well. So we're here to support you. We're here to guide you through this, and we're here to help.
Thank you so much. And so, as I stated, Coach Broadnax, you have for decades had many young men come and cross your path. How is it that you go through processes related to modeling, having the conversation, and basically holding young men accountable when it comes to this issue?
Alderman Gibson Carter, a pleasure to be here. I know here at Savannah State, they provide a lot of resources for it, and being part of the NCAA, they provide a lot of resources for it, and we do a lot of training with these young men to give them scenarios that could possibly get them in trouble. You know, I do a lot of informal stuff in practice and just trying to educate them as best as possible how to treat a young lady, the communication, the relationships. But like I said, the NCAA, the athletic department provides a lot of information for these young men. And like I said, having a lot of informal conversations about their role in certain situations. I know that when we have certain events on our campus regarding sexual violence, it's amazing. Some of the, I wouldn't say the lack of information or the lack of knowledge that the young men have. So it's a continual education process. It's not like one event, one training is good enough for these young men, but it's a constant re-education of how to deal with certain situations. Like no means no, and you could be amazed that when the rape counselor were talking about no, even if you're within that action, that if a woman says no, that no means no, and you can see the responses in the audience from the young men. So there's a constant approach that we got to constantly do as far as education, because we make an assumption that people should know this, and a lot of times it's not taught in the homes. I mean, it's maybe spoken of in the home in a certain way, but that's a good thing about Savannah State. It's an educational institution, and we're here to provide education opportunities for these young men. And just from my role, being here 16 years, I try to be as informal with them about certain situations with young ladies.
Yeah, and I want to say that Savannah State was among the universities here in our immediate area who was very active and very receptive to receiving support services externally by way of bringing in nonprofit organizations. We actually started a rape center within the nursing facility there at Savannah State. And Nadira was very instrumental in helping us get that started and keeping it going. You said a few key things that brings us here tonight. And this is what I want to challenge men in our community. I want to challenge men in various roles, and I want to challenge families, particularly those who have under their guidance young men. It's more challenging and more difficult for you as a coach, I would imagine, in keeping with this constant approach of teaching or helping young men understand the values of consent, what that means, what that looks like. And we're going to ask Chief to chime in with consent, what it means in the state of Georgia in a few minutes, and what the law says with regard to rape and why so many young men get in trouble because they don't understand that. But I would imagine that the music, social media, lots of peer pressure on the campuses when they encounter people from different cultures or different roles when they come to these university settings, it makes your job more difficult. And so what we want to do here tonight is make an appeal to those individuals who are under the sound of our voices and recognize that this is an opportunity to start a conversation. Hopefully we will give you some buzzwords to use tonight. Hopefully you'll recognize a phrase or identify behavior in your young man when you will take an opportunity to have a conversation with your young man about what consent is. What does the Georgia State statute, what 16-1.1, I think it is, what does that say about what sexual violence is? Helping them recognize that it is not appropriate to have sex with a female who has been drinking or is at the point of incapacitation or inebriated. So we want you to continue to be an ambassador for this work. We're so happy to have you recognize that there is rape culture that does exist. And thank you for recognizing that you have a responsibility to carry those messages, to start the conversation, and to hold the young man accountable, and most of all, to model the behavior. We have to be the change that we want to see. So thank you so much for joining us. You can stick around for as long as you want. I know you have something else to do tonight, but we want to stay connected to you, and if ever we can come out and speak to the young men, and we encourage you to seek the services of agencies within our city that can connect with them periodically throughout the year and the season as well.
Thank you very much. We definitely will be seeking your services because, like I said earlier, I mean, it's about education, preparation, and it's never enough because it can spill over to other individuals. Thank you for having
Yes, sir. And it's enough to go around. We cannot have enough people. There aren't enough agencies. There's not enough support and services to carry this message. You know, there's one thing to provide the advocacy when it happens. We don't want that phone call from our daughter, our mother, or even a young man for that matter. No one wants that phone call that says they have been raped. I was talking to Ms. Brown earlier, and I said I can remember getting those 2 a.m. and those 3 a.m. phone calls of young girls having to get our assistants to call their parents who is states away or cities away to say that they're at the hospital and they were just raped. And then a small part of me allowed myself to think about the call that that young man had to make to his parent to say, "Mom, I've been arrested for rape." And so that's the seriousness that we want to have present here tonight for individuals who have in their care young men, to really take this issue very, very serious, to recognize how life-changing an act of rape can cause a woman. And we also pause to recognize that men are violated as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And I see just coming in is Mr. Anthony Martrell, our community activist and youth pastor here in the city of Savannah. You'll join this conversation as well. Chief, take us to school. Take us to school about this issue and tell us what you have done in your work and your role and how you have worked to stop rape and some of the changes that you've made in your department via policies. We just talked to Representative Scott Holcomb, and because of his work, your work has changed. And so what does that mean for Georgians? Okay, the volume. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can. You know what? I'm so happy to see that I'm actually better than you at one thing. You know, he was the smartest one in the class, y'all. I used to copy off his work. Go ahead.
Don't tell anybody that. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. And you gave me a pretty big task. I'm going to first start about my experience with sexual assault with my job. It's a buzzword that one of my favorite people in the Macon area uses. It's called intimate partner violence. And that kind of encompasses a lot of different things. Big shout out to Tamika Richardson Daniels, who heads Georgia Legal Services in Macon. That's one of her words that she uses. It encompasses everything. But as far as what we've done over the years is, when I first came, we addressed the lack of protocol and the lack of uniformity amongst all of the different agencies. We had a sexual assault protocol, and it was a pretty decent sexual assault protocol. And I worked on that when I first came into investigation, and it basically needed to be adhered to every single time. The problem that came up was that we had a sexual assault protocol. The sheriff department had a different sexual assault protocol. Byron had a different protocol. Macon had a different protocol. So you got, the 8 or 9 different municipalities that constitute our judicial circuit. Each had an individual way of doing things. So what we had to do was we formed a
Okay, I think he froze. Mr. Martrell, are you still with me? Oh man, what's wrong with my audio tonight?
No, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was absolutely muted. It was me. Chief is back.
Mr. Spurgeon. Chief,
I'm
okay,
back.
that was some good stuff. Go ahead. You had us. Take us back.
Okay, I don't know where I stopped,
but you cut out on the fact that there were various protocols in the different municipalities.
Yes, and what we had to do was like I said, we formed a sexual assault response team before Georgia even mandated it, and by doing that, we kind of came up with some consistency and uniformity across. What we wanted to do was everything within the Peach, Bibb, Crawford circuit, the sexual assault should all be handled the same. And at some point, and I think that came from going to different trainings and stuff, and I brought those ideas back. And eventually that got to the state level some kind of way. But when it comes to intimate partner violence and to sexual assault, what I've found is a lot of times people are actually, like you mentioned this, they're confused about what consent is. If a person in the state of Georgia is inebriated or under any kind of intoxicant or under the influence of any kind of medicine or drug, they cannot consent to sex. If a person is not of age, and age of consent in Georgia is 16, they cannot consent to sex. If you are in the custody of or the police department, the sheriff department, you cannot consent to sex. If you are a patient at a hospital, if you are under doctor's care, psychology care, you cannot consent to sex. And I think a lot of times people get confused by that because, when we come and you get the statement, it's like, well, she wanted to do this. This is what she said. And we have to explain to them that, the legalities of it. And just very quickly, just off the top of my head, people get the word sexual assault, sexual battery, rape, and sodomy. They get them all mixed up, but they each have individual definitions in the state of Georgia. A sexual assault is when somebody has sex with a person who's in custody in one of those definitions I just gave you. Okay. Sexual battery is the mere touching of a person's intimate parts. And Georgia defines that as buttocks, breast, inner thigh area, places that we know that people shouldn't be touching. Rape is just quite simply the unlawful carnal knowledge of a person. And if you touch a person with any part of your body, in the carnal area, whether that be a man or a woman, then that could be considered. If it's penetration, it could be considered rape. And then sodomy, of course, is illegal, and that talks about anal penetration as well as forcible oral sex. So all of these things are things that we have dealt with. Unfortunately, we had a serial rapist that was basically attacking college students or college age young ladies at one point. That was a huge investigation. So I've had a lot of dealings with this, unfortunately, and I commend you on I've been keeping track of what you've been doing in Savannah, and I commend you for not only the work you've been doing, but this forum as well. So thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you so much. You really dropped a lot of knowledge on us, and a couple of things I want to highlight. Ms. Brown and I were talking about this presentation tonight, and you said something that reminded me of what she said when it comes to the act of a sexual encounter. And Ms. Brown, can you explain what you said to me when you said that sexual encounters are fluid?
Yes. So sexual encounters are fluid. And when what I mean by fluid is you may have had sex with this person before, but today it may be different. And then also you may have sex with one person, but the next person may not have the same desires. So each day, each time, each minute, everything is fluid. You don't know how that person day went. You don't know what type of triggers they have. You don't know how they're feeling at that moment. So sexuality, as well as sexual intercourse, is a fluid motion, and constant checking in and constant communication throughout the action or intimacy is definitely a necessity.
And so with that stated, I guess young people in particular would say that this sounds a little bit granola, but this is the importance of having healthy relationships. And this loose, casual sex hookup culture, it brings us very close to the act of rape. When you are not engaged in a relationship with someone where you recognize all of those cues previous to sex as well as during sex. And we want to thank you for really demonstrating what these pieces look like when it comes to the law. And you are right there in the city of Fort Valley, where Fort Valley State University is. And we know that 1 in 4 women and girls will be raped or sexually assaulted before she graduates college. And
Yes.
so with the student population at Fort Valley State, I'm sure that keeps you somewhat busy, although those cases are probably handled by GBI, right?
No, we handle a bunch of them. Generally,
Okay.
the GBI gets involved if it is a serial rape or it goes across jurisdictions. We have used them before, but just let me piggyback on something she just said, and I love that word. I took a note on that on fluid. A lot of times, what we have, and if you want to do a case study, what I always recommend for people to do is to go back and actually read the case notes from the Kobe Bryant situation in Colorado. There was an agreement on one sexual act. When he presented himself, he wanted to do another sexual act. That's where the disagreement came. So to her point, that fluidity stopped. Because there was a disagreement, he decided, well, I'm gonna do this anyway because we've consented to something else. And we have that happen on college campuses, all the time, where people actually, you go to somebody's room, because it's a particular time of night, you think y'all have a couple of drinks, or you bought that person dinner or whatever, and that automatically just means that this is going to happen. And I think there needs to, and I like what she said about clear lines of communication. People need to really be transparent and open about what their intent is, and that eliminates a lot of these issues, especially from the male perspective, because you're not guaranteed anything just because 2 days before this was one situation. That person might have a whole different attitude this time, and that's not a defense in the state of Georgia that, well, we had consensual sex 2 days ago, so I just assumed we could do it today.
Right. And we wish it were as simple as, and I'm sure you do too, Coach Broadnax, telling your young men and boys not to speed, stop at the stop signs, and recognize that if they speed, they're going to get a ticket. And if you run the stop sign, you're going to get a ticket. And the fact that you say, I didn't see the stop sign, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And so what we really are trying to do is help our young men understand the value of knowing what the law is, related to these offenses of sexual violence, if you will. With that, Coach Broadnax, we also want to recognize, as I will continue to say throughout this show, men are victims too. Chief highlighted what the crimes are related to sexual violence. And while in the state of Georgia, a man legally, by law, by way of Georgia state statute, cannot be raped, but there are accounts or laws on the books that acknowledge the sexual offense against a man, and that's considered sodomy. And so I guess a part of the conversation you can now add to all of what we say to our young men when it comes to sexual violence is help them recognize that they too are in position and susceptible to sexual violence, if you will. And I want to bring in Mr. Martrell to talk about his work with youth advocacy on a college campus, as well as personal accounts and experiences that you've had.
Good evening, everyone. Again, hey Chief, how you doing? It's my first time meeting Chief, y'all, virtually. His sister is actually a JCSU grad, and one of my favorite singers. And when I realized who he was, I was like, "Oh, Spurgeon!" So I'm sorry. Give me that
small
moment.
world. I had no
Yes.
idea.
But as a survivor, specifically a survivor who grew up in church culture and in Christian culture, that was very quiet and very hush hush about sexual assault, about molestation, about rape. It was difficult to empower myself, but in empowering myself, I found strength from other survivors and other young people who had no empowerment until they heard me open my voice or open my mouth. As Alderwoman and Carter and I were talking, I told her that becoming a resident assistant or an RA on a college campus, looking over a college dorm and being required to look after college students, we were required to go through training with our campus police officers. Our campus police officers were required to write out a guideline that Charlotte PD also had. So Charlotte PD, Johnson C. Smith University, and the RAs were all in one room talking about how to handle rape. And so it made a difference when an actual situation did come up. It made a difference when we actually did have to sit down and document writing out a rape, writing out an encounter. And I think the most difficult part about it was having to walk on the campus and hear other young men defend the rapist. One of the harshest things about being a man is taking up for women without looking or feeling emasculated. And we punish Black men for taking up for Black women a lot of times. And, I can't speak for other communities, but this is my personal experience. But we punish Black men a lot of times for taking up for Black women. And so it's even harder for them to take up for themselves. So a lot of Black men are walking around and their strength every single day as a Black man is because they have to provide for their mother, for their sister, for their daughter. And the only reason why they have that strength is because without that feminine energy protecting them, they do not feel whole. So how do you tell us as a man that we're wrong for protecting the very women that we feel protected us when other men or other women took advantage of us? Some men have some of the most feminine tendencies and qualities, not necessarily because that's their sexuality or necessarily because that's who they are as a person, but because if it had not been for some of those women with those tendencies, they would not have the strength that they have. Those tendencies to them helped them survive. And so we have to start having a conversation about Black men who took on Black femininity and Black feminine culture as their strength, because it was the only thing that was strong enough to counteract rape culture. The only thing that I have seen stronger than a rapist is the survivor of the longest lasting rape culture in this country, and that has been the rape of the Black woman. I am strong as a Black man because I had a mother who was a survivor of molestation, constantly telling me that I was stronger, that if she beat it, I could beat it. And so we have too many Black households where women are raising children that have gone through the same thing they had to go through, and no one is breaking it up. And it's the men who are allowing it to happen. I can't be one of those men.
So having that courage and that boldness to stand in the face of what you have described as awful rape culture that we have in this country, we honor you. And as I stated to you before, I honor your survivorship and I honor your voice. And I thank you. I thank you for taking a stand. And I gotta get my glasses because you say you've been in my house and you met me and all this stuff. And I, okay, yeah, I think I remember. I don't know. That really freaked me out when you gave me that description of our first encounter. But your experience is so unique in that you've had this college campus experience.
Hold on, give me 1 second, Alderwoman Carter. And this is what I mean. So let me explain to you all our first encounter, okay? And this is why I'm an advocate for Kesha Gibson Carter. Not necessarily because of who she is, you know, to Savannah, but who she is to me. So as I said, Black families and the Black church has been very, very hush hush, but also very loud about rape and molestation and about the tendencies that come from rape and molestation. And so one night, my family, which is a very religious family, they thought that I was at one event place and had no idea that I heard them in the background talking and having their conversation. And in all honesty and actuality, I wasn't in the place they thought I was. I was at Alderwoman Carter's house because Pastor Wayne Grimes had invited me there after church. And while I was in a place of hurt, a place of sadness, while I was in a place where I didn't even want to be around my own family, she and her family had opened their doors to me unknowingly. And that's what I mean. Every single day, we have warriors who are taking up where other people have knocked them off. And we cannot fight the people who are praising and encouraging these warriors. I will always be a KGC advocate.
Well, I want to have you on every week because that made me feel so good. And the thing that scared me about what you told me earlier, you came to my house on a night where it was a whole bunch of people here. So, you know, they say always be aware of who you entertain because you just might be entertaining an angel. And
Unaware.
Guess what? Yes. So I want to thank you for being an angel ambassador for advocacy. And I felt so much strength in our talk today. And I really appreciate what you have devoted to youth, as well as what your intentions are where the church is concerned. And so we want to just pause here and just say, before I bring in Dr. Toure to close us out and to tie all of this up in his special way, when it comes to the church, so we've talked about athletics, athletes in college campuses. We've talked about the locality, the law related to rape and sexual violence. And Ms. Brown has expressed to us what triggers individuals may be feeling and given us a few scenarios related to what consent looks like in the course of a sexual encounter. But I want to say that the most important body, the most important organization available to us today when it comes to stopping rape culture, when it comes to raising up a group of men to be ambassadors for this work, is the church. It's the church. And we want to encourage our pastors and our congregations to use your pulpit, use your pulpit to denounce sexual violence, use your pulpit to build up women, and use your pulpit to encourage men to be ambassadors for this work related to sexual violence. Reach out to your nonprofit community, reach out to external services. Don't try to solve all of these problems on your own. In addition to using your pulpit, we want you to incorporate policies that speak to how you behave within the course of doing your administrative church work as well as your worship service. Those policies and establishing practices that can be adopted by Sunday school teachers, by deacons, by deaconesses, by ministers, by the music staff. We want to make sure that you are taking this work seriously when it comes to preventing sexual violence. We have for a long time been providing advocacy and providing services to individuals after they have become assaulted, right? But what are we doing and what can we do proactively to prevent it? And one of the things that we can do to prevent it is what we're doing here tonight. One is just starting the conversation and talking about it. Two is just laying out the facts. And three is being a voice beyond this platform. Being a voice beyond this platform to go out to the masses and say, men can stop rape and men will stop rape, because we know that all men do not commit rape. Again, men have mothers, daughters, sisters, wives. They don't want those women to be raped. And so by virtue of that fact, we know that there's just a small percentage of the male demographic that commit multiple rapes. So Dr. Toure, close us out, sir, in your special way. You can add in some of the things that you've done. I know I have had times where you've actually called me in the course of the work that I was doing at the Rape Crisis Center, and since I've even been gone, to connect with survivors who reach out to you. And that's what we want to acknowledge also. Mr. Martrell told me that when he acknowledged his survivorship, that served as empowerment for a family member to express what had occurred with her and how it was healing. Because one of the things that this evil act does is it keeps the victim paralyzed and gripped in silence when we don't talk about it. Sexual violence prevails when the victim remains silent. When the victim speaks out, not only is it liberating and that person puts themselves in a position to receive support, but the hearer, because rape and child molestation is so pervasive, oftentimes when you say it out loud, you're going to be saying it to someone that had that experience and never spoke of it. Dr. Toure?
And greetings to our Alderwoman, and I was going to say this, that this morning on national television they brought up Horace Broadnax's name as part of one of the greatest leaders with regards to basketball, with regard to the Georgetown Hoyas. Just this one, and I recorded, Coach. I recorded it. I played it back. So yeah, I got yeah. Now, Coach Broadnax, see how God works.
I have all kind of breaking news going on the show tonight.
Hey, Dr. Toure, you're a great recruiter for Savannah State basketball. The Underground Railroad, I didn't know it went south. It went south too.
So yes, sir.
I love it.
So we got the time. So they did it this morning. I'm gonna be putting it out there. And then the thing I'm gonna share with regard to the chief, and the chief talked about this, and that again about consent. Consent cannot be given to a student to a teacher, because some people get caught up into that. That you have teachers or educators who are also now engaging in this too at times. So there's no consent that can be given. Somebody's treating someone, they can't give consent. And Reverend Martrell, one of the things that happened for me this years ago, going back 10 years ago, excuse me, actually I was going to say almost 20 years ago, I had said to when we were at a continuing education session where they began to talk about rape, and they began to talk about molestation. They even talk about right now. I then said to them, I said, no, molestation and rape has been a part of American society for some 400 years. But guess what happened? some of the same people there who should be talking about this, who are involved in this right here in Savannah, Georgia, in Chatham County, they said, why Jamal always got to bring that up? I'm saying you think it's something new. It's not anything new. It's always been around. And we must be the voices, as we constantly talk, we must be the voices for the people. And then to our counselor, dear Brown, one of the things, just like what she was saying, I tell folks, I'm going to say it's case by case. That you just can't go and think because you were able to do it one time that you can continue to do it. No, it doesn't work like that. And to throw something out there, there's an African spiritual philosophy that says, you know the condition of a society based on the condition of the women. Again, you know the condition of society based on the condition of the women. And I tell folks, and I ask this question at times to folks, I say, so what is the condition of women right here? And then some people get foolish, like, it's okay. I look like, what? Women are oppressed. And I say, guess what? That means that the entire society is oppressive. I say, women are a thermometer for all societies. Where we live, based on how women are treated, that tells us on how all of us are treated. When we begin to elevate women, we elevate the society. But as long as we go after them, we victimize them, we prey on them, then we see that happen to all of us. And that's why, yes, and I said to you, Alderwoman Carter, that men must stop rape. It's not that they should, they must. It is essential that they go and do that, because when we don't do that, then yes, then we do fall victim to all of us, because the oppression hits all of us. And I said, it is time out. And now I'm going to throw something out that was probably shocking to some people, that coming up in June this year, in June 2021, there was 1 year ago to show you how when our people don't have those voices out there, people stand up for them, they now will find other means. There were a group of college students who went on Twitter to not talk about their rapists, their sodomizers. They put it out there publicly. And I went and addressed some folks about this and said, listen, the students are putting this information out there and they are naming names. They're putting individuals out there and they are not giving their accounts. I've had great leaders, great young people, great young leaders who have talked about and said, Jamal, and when you gave the numbers, Alderwoman Carter, that they went and said, I've experienced rape 2 times. Some are going and said, I've experienced rape 4 times. And I'm looking at them, and the people who are saying this are young leaders. These are leaders. These are leaders. These are not the shy. These are not the reclusive ones. These are the ones that are out there gregarious, but they have experienced this assault on them, and people are not standing up. It is essential for us now to stand up. It is essential for us to do that. And when we don't do that, then we all fall. And it's time for us not just to be men. It's time for us to be human beings. It's time for us to respect our women, because when we respect our women, we respect ourselves. The best of us are tied to our mothers, to our daughters, to our nieces, to our aunts, to our grandmothers. It is essential that we do that. And sometimes we tend to forget that. And I tell folks, it is being a man is that it allows you to speak up and not be afraid. And that's why I threw out the counseling right now. I think some of us are so afraid of man and woman that we don't even love God. Because when you love God, you stand up and speak out. So it's essential for us now to begin doing that, because I see the culpability that's happening with the people just allowing things to occur because we think it's okay. And it's time for us now to make those moves with regard to progression, because we got to elevate the women in our society, especially, I'm going to put it out there, African American women. It is essential for our community to grow. African American women must be elevated and must be protected. The job of men are to protect women, and that's not to anyone who might be feminist. You don't even understand what time it is. We as African people, we are holistic. We look out for men and look out for women. We do that for all of us. And so our job is to make sure we protect the guardians of our society. And that's our women, the thermometers.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. Martrell, do you want to say something?
I did. Dr. Toure brought up something. Okay, we talked about really briefly. What we did not talk about was the church and rape culture. And earlier today, I posted something on Facebook where I essentially apologized, not necessarily for just my role in the miseducation that has been spewed in Savannah, but for the miseducation that has come to generations before me. Because one of the things that I've learned is we make the scripture of no effect with the lives and the work that we do. And what I mean by that is what Dr. Toure just said. How we treat our women is how our women will be treated. I will get in trouble for this. I do not care. I will get in trouble for this. I do not care. For all the women in the city of Savannah, I'm telling y'all, for all the women in the city of Savannah are being treated like dirt right now. And everybody is saying, we don't hear no male preachers. We don't hear no male preachers. We don't hear no male preachers. Well, let me tell you why you don't hear no male preachers. And you can tell them Anthony Martrell said this. You go on the corner of 37th and Jefferson right now and you tell me what you see. You go on the corner of 37th and Jefferson right now and you tell me what you see. You'll see a vacant lot. What used to stand there was the First Metropolitan Baptist Church. 30 days exactly after Alfonso McClendon was indicted on sexual assault charges for a minor, that church burned to the ground. The only thing that I heard a preacher in Savannah publicly declare was, y'all don't need to open your mouth about him because I have known him all my life. And that was Bishop Matthew Marvin Odom. I ain't afraid to say it. Bishop Odom said we had needed to not open our mouth about Pastor McClendon. So right now, today, when 4 older women in this city are being dragged by the media, are being talked about, when everything that they are being doing, or everything that they are trying to do for this city is being wiped and ran through the mud, and they are asking, where are the male pastors who are speaking up? I don't expect them to speak up because none of them are talking about the open case that's in Chatham County Courthouse right now against Alfonso McClendon. So if we want to talk about change in Savannah, let's start in the pulpits. Let's start with the pulpit that was burned down on 37th and Jefferson. Now, I was raised under Alfonso McClendon. I preached in First Metropolitan. This is what I mean. I can't even look at my own uncle and godfather in the eye, knowing that they still stand in the pulpit, that they still in association. I was in middle school. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get in trouble. I was in middle school when Pastor Breedy tore up Tremont Temple and started Reconciliation Baptist Church. I will forget it. So how are we supposed to raise another generation of male preachers if the generation that came before them abused our women and we let them do it? I don't get it. I don't get it. So I'll get in trouble. I don't care. A long time ago, I made the decision a long time ago that I was not in y'all crowd. I don't care to be in y'all crowd. I don't. Because you hang with rapists, and murderers. If you can rape our women, you can murder our community. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
And so, Dr. Toure, you brought up a very valid point. The way we treat our women is how we feel about our community, and what we allow in our community is essentially what will be.
Yeah.
And so we have seen Black preachers consistently allow the Black community to be deprived, and they are showing us how they feel about us, the way they're treating those 4 women. That's all I wanted to say.
I need to look at you again, because this is not going to be the last time I see you, sir.
Listen, tell us how you feel, dog.
Right, and I love it. And listen, it doesn't matter. I'm no stranger to trouble, but whatever it is that you're getting into is good, and it's pleasing to my ears, because the truth, crushed down to the earth, shall rise again. And we're so happy to have provided this platform for your truth tonight. And what we want to do is we want to continuously encourage individuals to be a voice. As I stated, this awful, awful act of violence can only prevail if we remain silent. There are people and families across this nation where they cannot enjoy having Aunt Sarah or Cousin Nikki or Auntie Josephine or their cousin Gary come to Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner anymore. You know why? They're not coming to your Thanksgiving dinner. They're not coming to your Christmas dinner as long as you got Uncle Willie with the slick, nasty fingers who molested them. And Auntie Cora knew about it and didn't say anything because she didn't want shame to come on Uncle Willie, because then that same shame would come on the family. And that's essentially what you just described. We are so protective of the dirty bathwater. We are so protective of these nasty little hidden secrets. And until we say it out loud, I really feel and believe that this platform tonight, our conversation tonight, not only is it going to help some young men, athletes, young boys who are going off to college for the first time. We've had you all offer expressions of warning of pitfalls they may face in high school and college. But you know what else is happening tonight? We are empowering a survivor to speak up for the first time. We are empowering a male who was raised by those females, and people say that they have those female tendencies. We are empowering them to now speak up and find their rightful place in their community, find their rightful place within their profession, find their rightful place within the church, find their rightful place in our community, and be the ambassador for this work and declare that men can stop rape. Listen, y'all, this has been a great platform tonight. I want to continue. This is supposed to be part 2. I think I'm going to have a part 3 now so that we can run on a little bit longer. Mr. Martrell, I love your truth and I love your trouble. Chief, I can't wait to visit the Valley again.
Come on.
Yeah, it's not quite peach season yet, is it?
Not quite. And it's been a lot of rain. So they're gonna be kind of watered down this year. I don't know if it's gonna be as sweet as usual. So, but we'll look out for you.
Okay, Coach. Listen, I looked at your son the other day and he freaked me out because y'all look so much alike. I had to do a double take. Listen, best wishes to you, sir, and all of your yes, and all of your athletic performances. We hope you all do well. Dr. Toure, I'll see you in rating season. Sir. That's all I need to say. Our ratings. Miss Brown, thank you for being my sidekick. And guess what? This is the beginning of something very special, my friend. Y'all have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.